here's a story time about my first Bigfoot experience.
So back in 2023, I'd been doing the podcast seriously for about a year and some change, and I started getting more Bigfoot, paranormal, alien abductee kind of guests, and so I just kind of leaned into it. You know, the podcast subject matter changed to mostly that. And next thing I know, I get invited to an actual cryptid expedition with legit researchers and a legit organization. You know, I played it cool. Inside, I was guest on Beauty and the Beast. Yes, I'd love to go on your cryptid expedition. What kind of supplies do I need to acquire first? On the inside, I was giddy as a schoolgirl. Now, this did involve camping. And growing up, my house was literally in the woods. I had the coolest camping gear. I had everything, every birthday, every Christmas. I got a little article of camping equipment. And I even, you know, being in the woods, I had like a camp set up permanently. I could just go out there, build a fire, and, you know, pitch the tent, as they say. And I'd be good to go. I had everything. That's been a long time ago. And now my camping gear is tragic, to say the least. Or it was then. My oldest daughter had been in a Girl Scout equivalent organization at church. So I had a tent, a couple of sleeping bags, a blanket, and an air mattress. And that was all that I had. This is terrible equipment if you plan to go meet a demon in the woods. And this outing was to be in late fall. I remember correctly, it was late October, 1st of November. I'd have to go back and look. Doesn't matter. The night before I got there, they had started a couple days early. It had been in the low 20s at night, and it was set to be, you know, 30, 29, 30 in that area. But a couple of nights I was going to be there. And of course, I had to work, so I rolled into town about 8 p.m. And my friend that invited me met me there. I parked out by him, camped out by him, and set up camp, got all my supplies out. I think I had a cooler at the time. You know, I was high society, I had a cooler of my own. And we set up the tent, got everything going. I was ready for the night by 8:30 and spent the rest of the night sitting around the campfire, talking to actual researchers, witnesses, people who had material, and was having a really good time till about 1:30 when everybody decided, you know, it's time to call it quits, and we all kind of went our separate ways to our campsites and to our beds. So here I am, crawling into my tent, hardly any supplies. To bed, I wore a 3-in-1 parka. If you hunt or duck hunt, deer hunt or duck hunt, that's a huge parka. It's got 3 jackets in one. You can survive a lot in that 3-in-1 parka. A pair of really insulated camouflage coveralls, a pair of gloves. I think I had wool socks on, and I kept my Merrells on. Well, I might have just put some kind of a Hey Dudes on instead of my actual hiking boots. And I had a toboggan on my head, or you'd call it a meanie in other parts of the country. Wool hat. I can't quit calling it a toboggan. You know, my head kind of looked like this microphone. You know what I'm saying? I have a giant head. Anyway, I lay down on this air mattress in all of this pathetic look. It looked like Ralphie's brother on A Christmas Story. And, you know, I can't put my arms down. But it was warm. I was warm in that tent. It was still high 30s by that time. Well, no, it wasn't. This is about 1:30 in the morning. It was already getting cold. So, yeah, when I first got there, it was still kind of warm. But I tried to put and a side note, I tried to put my earpods in to watch a little bit of Netflix because there was some cell service. I was going to watch some TV because nothing else was going on. It was stone quiet. And they quit working, which is odd in what is quote unquote Bigfoot country. I mean, they never had issues before, but that night they were wow, 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 wow. Could have been because they were in my pocket and it was cold. I don't know, but that's beside the point. Yada, yada, yada. I go to sleep anyway. Then 3 a.m. comes. I wake up to footsteps behind my tent. Slow, rhythmic footsteps. Shh, 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 shh. Like I said, I grew up in the woods. I'm not Daniel Boone, but I know when something's on 2 legs and when it's on 4. This was bipedal. This was walking 2 legs. And I'm laying there thinking about what I've always talked to myself about what I would do if I had an experience like this. What would happen? I'm like, don't panic. Let it happen. Stay calm. Because in my mind, there's multiple Bigfoot, if you will, big feet, Bigfoots, walking behind my tent, and they're going to open it up here in just a second, look at me and say, hey, nice girl's tent. I'm going to be like, shut up, Bigfoot, it's my daughter's tent, it's all I can afford. But I digress. The footsteps get faster. Not running, just deliberate. You know, it's like somebody, you're like walking in a grocery store, they're not like running, but they know we're going to go, so they're like, it's almost not as fast, not as almost as slow as they were, but it's a good brief pace. You weren't lollygagging, but you weren't in a rush. You know what I'm saying? You're more of it was a strong. Then in the midst of the I hear this, which in my mind growl, grunt. You always hear Bigfoot's growling and grunting. I'm like, and then I don't know what happened. I heard the follow up like that, and I realized it's my friend's cousin in the tent next to me. He snored. That's what I heard. He snored. So thankfully, not an aggressive growl coming, which is good news, I guess, in the not getting eaten by a wild cryptid world. But at that moment, I woke up and realized the sound I was hearing was my beanie toboggan rubbing against here as I breathed in the giant clothes I had on with the giant hood. It was shh, shh, shh. And as I started breathing heavier because of the thing happening, I heard shh, 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 shh. And the sense of relief was there. I'm not going to get eaten by a Bigfoot today or killed by a Bigfoot today, but I'm also not going to get to have a Bigfoot experience. So it was relief, and I was laughing to myself because now I know how I'd behave if I were having a Bigfoot experience. That's good information to have. But at the same time, I was like, for a couple of minutes, or, it may have been under a minute before I realized it came out of my 100% sleep, I was having Bigfoot experience. There was something, it sounded like something behind my tent. The way the hood and the tent was reverberating that sound in my ear. Hey, you couldn't have convinced me it wasn't anything walking back there otherwise. Like I said, it was my first Bigfoot experience, and I consider it, it was proof of concept. Because that whole time, it was, it was about to happen. Hope you enjoy my story. I know it wasn't a Bigfoot story, a Bigfoot experience, genuine Bigfoot experience, but hey, it's, to me, for that, yeah, I've said it twice already. I hope you liked it, and thanks for watching.